Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. We are currently just west of LAX, one of the busiest airports in the world, and behind me, hidden by fences, lie the ghost streets of Surfridge, once home to Hollywood elites, and now lost to the sky. Right now we are in Los Angeles, California, wedged in between the Pacific Ocean and Los Angeles International Airport, right off Vista Del Mar. Going back over a century, this whole area was wild, undeveloped land, part of the Bologna wetlands and El Segundo dunes. In the late 19th century, oil prospectors staked claims nearby, but the coastline itself remained mostly windswept and forgotten. That began to change in the early 1920s, when developers realized the real value of this land wasn't beneath it, but above it. If you look at this area on Google Maps, you could see a number of abandoned streets and can tell that there was once an entire neighborhood here. In fact, this area had over 800 homes at one point. It's supposed to be sunny today, so hopefully these clouds burn off soon. But in 1921, the Dickinson and Gillespie Company began a neighborhood land development here they called Palisades del Rey. The area we're looking at now was developed as an isolated playground for the wealthy. This part of the neighborhood would get named Surfridge when a Los Angeles resident won a $1,000 prize in 1925 for coining the neighborhood's name during a contest. Developers advertised this area's fresh sea breezes, ocean views, and perfect weather, the usual Southern California pitch. This wasn't farmland, it wasn't industry, it was coastal living for the elite. You can't actually enter the neighborhood today. It's owned by the airport, and we'd be pretty quickly arrested if we tried. We can still see a lot of it by walking around, though, and there is one part of the neighborhood that is still here that we could visit, and it even has a small connection to Elvis. So by the 1930s, Surfridge was taking shape. Streets like Naples, Waterview, and Vista Del Mar were laid out in a curving, suburban grid to maximize views and minimize traffic. Utilities were installed, Mediterranean and Spanish-style houses began popping up, many of them custom designed. And you can see right here where there was once a driveway. While the area was originally sold for mansions, by the 1960s, this area right here would have been apartment buildings. Originally, this was not a working-class neighborhood. Surfridge was for the wealthy. Something changed in the 1950s, though, which we'll get to in just a little bit. Here are some stairs that once led into an apartment complex, and now lead to nowhere. Some of the notable people who lived in Surfridge included the famous movie director Cecil B. DeMille, Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny, and countless other Looney Tunes and cartoon characters, and Charles Bickford. Here comes another driveway. Judy Lewis, who was the secret love child of Clark Gable and Loretta Young, was even born in one of the houses here at Surfridge. And some more stairs to nowhere. For those wealthy enough to live here in the 1920s and 1930s, at night, they could hear the waves, and maybe, in the distance, a small aircraft landing at the fledgling Minesfield, about a mile away. But nobody thought much of it. After all, who cared about a sleepy airstrip on the edge of the dunes? All down the street you could find these old street lamps. Even though the neighborhood's abandoned, up until a few years ago, you could still find these throughout the neighborhood, and some would even still light up. But looking around, aside from the ones here on Vista Del Mar, it looks like the rest have been removed. So this kind of dates the sidewalk here. It looks like when the concrete was fresh, someone carved Beatles into it, and someone else, maybe the same person, carved Elvis underneath. I had mentioned that Elvis has a connection to this area. Part of his 1967 film Clambake was filmed on this street in front of Surfridge. He actually thought it was his worst movie and gave up acting partly because of it. But we will see a location from that film that's still here a little bit later. There are jets flying over constantly. Obviously, that sleepy airstrip didn't stay sleepy. Minesfield opened in 1928, and on June 7, 1930, the facility was dedicated and renamed Los Angeles Municipal Airport. We're coming up to one of Surfridge's abandoned streets now. This one was actually the last street through Surfridge to close. It closed decades after the rest, but they finally closed it for security reasons after 9/11. You can see it had fences on both sides of the road. That's so anyone that stopped wouldn't be able to access the rest of the neighborhood. Here's another abandoned street. It looks like they've tried to bury this one, though you can still see the curve and the sidewalk. The airfield really wasn't much of an issue for several decades. Before World War II, Burbank Airport and Grand Central Airport in Glendale were the main airports for the Los Angeles area, and initially the new airport failed to entice any of the commercial carriers away from those airports. That changed after the war. In 1946, most of the major carriers began doing passenger service from the Los Angeles Municipal Airport. Then Pan Am moved there in 1947. The airport was renamed Los Angeles International Airport in 1949. Still, the noise from propeller planes of the time was tolerable and didn't cause too much of an issue. Those days were numbered, though. On July 10, 1956, Boeing's prototype 367-80 visited LAX, and a few years later in 1959, jet travel began in full. Now there was constant, deafening, bone-rattling noise. Surfridge, once a quiet coastal escape, was suddenly under the flight path of some of the loudest machines ever built. This is how close this neighborhood is to the ocean, and of course nobody wanted to give this up quietly, no pun intended. So complaints rolled in, and as you can imagine, so did lawsuits. But the planes weren't going anywhere. By the 1960s, the city came up with a solution: eliminate the neighborhood. Using eminent domain, officials began buying up homes and forcing residents out. Some left willingly, others fought it in court, but one by one, the homes were emptied, boarded up, and eventually torn down. By the 1970s, Surfridge was no more. I don't know how well this comes out on camera, but there's a stamp on the sidewalk here. It looks like this concrete was laid in 1932. I do have to say, even with the noise, the way things are, these homes would cost millions of dollars today. Even though the neighborhood's long gone, Surfridge isn't completely lifeless. It's now a nature preserve. The El Segundo blue butterfly, which is an endangered species, has made a comeback, and burrowing owls and California gnatcatchers nest here. You can see what's left of someone's retaining wall here. Of course, it's terrible to lose your home, especially to eminent domain, but the noise from the jets wasn't the only issue. The exhaust from the planes overhead would coat people's homes and cars with soot, and I can't imagine that's too healthy to be breathing that in all the time. And you can even still make out the entrance to someone's yard up here. Checking out this view, you could see why, despite the noise from the jets and the soot and the exhaust, people did not want to give this up. And who can blame them? Imagine seeing this view out your window every morning. We're now approaching what would have been kind of the main boulevard into the neighborhood, designed to really impress those early buyers. You could see this same street lined with mansions and old advertisements. With the palm trees still here, it isn't hard to imagine how this would have looked in the 1930s and 40s, lined with Spanish-style mansions. But of course, here comes a jet with perfect timing to remind us why those mansions are long gone. I just noticed on the concrete here there's a date stamp from 1928, and then it looks like it says 9/17 underneath it, so probably September 17th, 1928. It's kind of crazy they took out all the houses, but left the streets. They're now ghost streets of a lost neighborhood. Now there is one part of Surfridge that we can still visit, and we actually passed it walking over here, so now we have to head back. The last part of Surfridge that remains is Vista Del Mar Park. The park was part of the neighborhood, and while everything else was being condemned and abandoned, the park was kept. In the final scene of the Elvis movie Clambake, they stop at this park, and I think this picnic table might actually be in the movie. I'll have to double check that, but these trees are definitely in it. That Elvis movie was also supposed to take place in Florida, but it's pretty clear the whole time that it was filmed in Los Angeles. But this park is all that remains of Surfridge. In old aerial photos of the neighborhood, you can even see that the park still retains the same footprint. This park is also a great place to get an up-close look at some of the old roads. This was one of the most expensive pieces of barren land in the country, costing the city of Los Angeles $60 million to buy the neighborhood, or $125,000 an acre. That's over $500 million today, adjusted for inflation. Over there you can see where after 50 years, some of the road is starting to fall apart. I once heard Surfridge called a story of progress at the cost of paradise, and I think that best sums this place up. So that's our look at Surfridge and the ghost streets of Los Angeles. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.